Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining us this morning, this afternoon. My name's Aaron. I'm a tech rep with Sigma, and I'm very excited to be joining the folks at Adorama here to speak with the very talented Brandi Nicole. She's going to be kind of walking us through how she uses her fast aperture Sigma primes to get the signature look of her images. And I'm going to be hanging out in the background in the chat to help answer any questions or help redirect them to Brandi. But with that said, I'll hand it over to Brandi and we'll get started.
Hey everyone, can everyone hear me okay? Thumbs up if you can hear me okay. For some reason, as soon as we started, I got a video audio or something is happening, something is playing. Anyways, let me know if you can hear me okay in the comments. I am actually have the comments up on my screen so I can see everyone that's here. I already see a bunch of friends from social media that's here. So thank you guys so much for being here today. Oh, I understand what I've got the audio. It's already. Okay, so hello, everyone that doesn't already know me. I am Brandi Nicole. Thank you again so much for being here and attending. Let me know in the comments where you're attending from, what your name is. There's a lot of friends here in the comments, so I'm just so happy to be here. And for all of you guys that showed up today on a lovely Friday to come hear our talk today. So if you don't already know, I am a New York City-based portrait photographer. For the past 10 years, I've been here. I am originally from a little suburb of Kansas City where I started my portrait business in high school. I was capturing like my teachers' weddings and my senior friends' senior photos. And after that, I went to University of Central Missouri, where I got my Bachelor of Science in Photography and fell in love with portraits. And it's somewhere around here where I had all these different assignments for photography. So I had like landscape and architecture and sports. And I certainly fell in love with portraits in all of my portrait assignments because I had that like connection with people, and just being able to capture their essence was really fun and rewarding for me. So I love connecting with people, and I love being able to use the tools and the skills and the techniques that I have slowly gathered and honed over 17 years of having a camera in my hands, which feels crazy to say. But yeah, so that is a little bit about me. Flash forward to today, and I'm a full-time portrait photographer in New York City. I work out of the studio behind me here to create a bunch of creative images for portrait clients or commercial clients, and generally just wake up every single day grateful to be doing what it is that I do. I just think I have the coolest job, so that's that. And especially lately, I've been identifying not with just the term photographer, but also artist. I've been working a lot with mixed media, watercolor, combining different art forms in an effort to constantly like explore and expand my creative toolkit to create that one-of-a-kind imagery. So today I'm about to drop some knowledge on how I got to be a full-time creative, go over a few of my standout favorite tools that I use in my work today, point to some rules that I learned in school and so on that are meant to be broken, and share in some lessons that I hope that you can carry out and bring into your work from here. So I didn't always think this way, but somewhere along my path, I found that photography is a tool to not only capture moments, but to also express ourselves creatively. And this realization, combined with nearly like 2 years of being indoors in this four walls during the pandemic, drove me to capture quite a bit of self-portraits, more than ever in my lifetime. I think if you look at my work from any time period, you'll see quite a bit of self-portraiture, but those past 2 years especially just like supercharged my creativity because I was constantly experimenting and constantly just trying new things like a little mad scientist in my studio. So this is just one of those tools, self-portraits, that made sense for me. As much as my creative motivation kind of comes on a whim or like last minute or like at midnight, things like this, I've always been available to be my own model for a lighting concept or an idea. It's not always possible, even though I live in the city with millions of people, to just get a model in the studio. So I've always been available, and that's always what works for me. And I didn't necessarily care if I was running back and forth to the camera after every shot. I was just able to learn a lot during this time. And in hindsight, I find that my photography skills have been increasing because of this. It's one of the key reasons that I have seen so much growth in my years of shooting. And you can really see it if you scroll through my Instagram. It's like 2020 and beyond, it just like kind of like exploded in terms of like what I was doing with my settings and what I was doing with my lighting and my editing and things like this. So I'm so grateful for all the tools that I have. My camera and lens notably, because obviously they're able to take the photo. And I guess I should also mention that I'm also extremely grateful for inspiration and the fact that that exists, because if it weren't for people that I looked up to all throughout college, people like Rosie Hardy, who does incredible self-portraits, Bella Kotak and Lara Jade, two incredible humans and photographers, that all did self-portraits, and they all kind of inspired me to find my own path and find my own journey with photography. And I just think that's so beautiful and magical that when we express ourselves authentically and creatively, and we share that with the world, and we're brave enough to share that with the world, we actually supercharge others, and we give them that motivation and inspiration to explore and experiment themselves. So that is just such a beautiful thing. So, okay, that's enough about me for now. I'm just gonna look at the comments real quick and see who's here. I see so many friends. We have an Andy, we have Kelly, Heather. Thank you guys so much for being here. And I love that we have pretty much people from all over here. So that's just wonderful. Thank you guys so much for being here today and saying all these sweet things. I will be keeping an eye on the chat. We will be also having time for questions towards the end. So as you have them, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll be collecting them, and I would love to answer those a little bit later. So okay, so we are here because of Sigma, and I have to admit that I'm a fangirl. We have two Sigma people here in the chat as well. And I have to admit that since college, I had a presentation where someone came from Sigma, a representative, and just told us a little bit about the brand. And they showed this video that I will never forget. And I tried to look for it on YouTube, but I can't find it. So I'm going to be looking to my Sigma people to see if they can send it to me. But it's this beautiful video where they showed the warehouse tour of how the lenses were made and how they take like meticulous attention to how every detail is crafted with their lenses. And for me in school, and I'm like looking at this video, I'm like so inspired, like I want a Sigma lens, you know, like they're just this next level in terms of like quality. And when you're watching this video, it reminds me a lot of like a How It's Made video, if any of you have seen that series. I just think it's really, really fun to start to get to know like how these things are made and how they're necessarily like crafted for photographers as well. I think that's really, really special. I think they take a lot of care in the craftsmanship to be able to do the things that we need them to do as photographers. So with their commitment to making these art lenses, especially that stop down to 1.4, and if this is all like going over anybody's head, like also let me know if there's any like newbie photographers in here. I really want to try to watch myself with the lingo that I use. So I will be breaking down what that means a little bit later, but essentially the fact that Sigma is able to create a lens that stops down to 1.4 is a huge feat when it is a reasonable price. There are other camera brands out there I won't mention that make similar lenses for a lot more money. And I think it's so wonderful that they're able to provide photographers with an incredible tool to be able to achieve portraits, especially with that 1.4 aperture, with a lens that's a really reasonable cost. So I'm a fangirl, had to throw it out there. And also the fact that they made an incredible like line of lenses dedicated to the art of photography, dedicated to the incredible glass in here that gets you that 1.4 aperture. I'm just in love. So that's that. I think that the lens you choose also as a photographer makes a crucial impact on the photos that you take, right? So when you change your lens from a 20 millimeter to an 85 millimeter, that is going to completely dramatically affect the type of photos that you'll take. So I'm grateful I've had the opportunity to test out many of Sigma lenses. My very first one was a super wide at 20 millimeter, and that was a whole lot of fun to take on all of my travels. I literally went to study abroad to Paris in college, and I brought two lenses, my kit lens and a Sigma 20 millimeter. And that is the only thing that stayed on my whole camera, mostly because the kit lens was trash, and I won't talk about that. But I am grateful to have had the experience with that lens. And now I have their new art line in the 35, 50, and 85. And oh my goodness, I'm blown away. I love every single image that is taken with these, especially when I'm shooting at 1.4. And it's just perfect. So it's a clear winner for me. I definitely had to throw that out there as they are the sponsor and the reason why I'm here today. Proudly going to be talking about this more. So we have the lens and we have the camera. They come together obviously to take a photo. But for me, it's really the settings where you can start to express yourself creatively and achieve your vision. So a show of hands, anyone here in the comments new to photography? And I know that there's going to be a little bit of a lag between me asking this question and you guys being able to write in here, but I would love to know if there's anybody like relatively new. And I ask this because we're about to go back to 101 real quick on a refresher course on understanding aperture. And I would just love to see who's brand new here, who's got a few years of experience, who here is like a total professional. We got a hand. We got at least one hand. Okay, great. Okay, relatively new. I love this. Okay, wonderful. I love that we have like a mixed crowd here because I know that Adorama's fan base is a lot of professionals, but I'm so glad that you guys are here. Oh, perfect. Okay, love seeing this in the comments. Okay, so understanding aperture. Oh, I actually have a slide for this. So I'm going to start pulling up my board and here we go. Share screen, desktop. And there we go. Okay, so well, here's some of my work. By the way, for those of you that are brand new to me, you don't know my work, you just know my face, you've heard me talk here for a couple minutes. This is some examples of the creative portrait work that I love to shoot. This is all what I would consider when I found my style. So all of this work is post like 2016 or so. And yeah, that's a whole nother topic for another day. But this is some of my work to get familiar with. And now I'm going to take us back to college in 101, Understanding Aperture. So here we go. Part one. So there are a number of incredible resources online about this, guys. So I'm going to try my best to explain it to you as if, you know, you were 5 or like as if you were my nephews. But I will give you some resources and later if this is still kind of confusing, because I know for me in college, understanding the exposure triangle and all of these ins and outs of the settings was really, really overwhelming. So I want to really just try to bring you with me and make this as not overwhelming as possible. So aperture is really simple. And for me, it's one of the most impactful things. Like if you can understand one thing about exposure, understand this one, because you'll be able to really take control of your photography and your settings in a way that I think is really, really impactful. So going to explain this. So the aperture is the hole in your lens that allows light to pass through and get to your camera sensor. Okay, so it's kind of like the pupil of your eye. It shrinks when there's a lot of light, and it actually expands when it's in low light. And this is also kind of the same relatively with your aperture, only that you get to control whether you want the aperture to be large or small. With this like little diagram I pulled up, you can kind of see, I don't know if you can also see my little cursor with this, I hope so. So when you're shooting at something like 2.8, which is considered a large aperture, you'll notice that you'll have that beautiful fall off of focus. So your subject will be in focus and everything behind it will be beautiful and blurry and wonderful. And on the flip side, when you're shooting at something like f/22, the whole of the aperture is teeny tiny, right? Like the pupil of your eye, but everything is generally in focus. So in general, we like to say we'll shoot f/22 when we're shooting things like nature, like landscapes, like when we want everything in focus, we don't want to miss a single detail. And then we generally shoot wide open, which is another kind of lingo that we use for a large aperture, which is confusing because it's a large aperture, it's wide open, but it's a small number, okay? So that's the only little confusing part. So if you're with me still and you understand that, then you've got it, you know? So what's cool about the Sigma lenses is that it doesn't even go down to just 2.8, but it goes down to 1.4. And that difference in aperture is like night and day. Like you can tell when you're looking at an image if it's shot at something like an f2.8 or with most kit lenses that shoot at f.4, you can tell the difference between that and something that stops down to 1.4. And I actually have another visual example on the next slide about that. So is it time for that? Maybe it's time for that. Yeah, I think it is time for that. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So this is an example of two photos that I've taken that are really similar, but they're totally different apertures. So the one on the left is a 1.4, and you can notice that the background elements are completely like blurring out into perfection, including these like, it's almost like overlapping a little bit in some areas. And I just think that's so beautiful as compared to this image on the right that has been shot at f3.5. So you can see in the Christmas lights specifically what a difference it makes to be shooting at an f-stop like 3.5 or 4 and 1.4. And this is just one example that I happened to find. And I actually have one more slide that kind of zooms into this effect on that top right corner. For me, it's all about the photo on the left. I really love when I'm able to just kind of like blur out those details into perfection. So this is obviously my preference. And this is, for me, what I think helps stand my images apart from others is like when I'm able to nail that focus and still able to get that beautiful bouquet in the background. So all this to say, make no mistake that shooting at 1.4 doesn't necessarily make everything blurry and soft. What sets these lenses apart is that focal plane that is in focus is going to be the sharpest thing that you'll see, especially when it's compared and contrasted to something like this, where it's so blurry in the background. So you have that beautiful fall off, but still you have that crisp focus of like the eyes being in focus. I think this is a really striking effect and something that I like to come back to time and time in my work. So that is a little bit about this. I'm not seeing any questions so far in the comments, so I'll let that go. But essentially, once you understand aperture, you unlock like playing with photography for the rest of your life. And I think that that's where things get really exciting. Shooting with these art lenses really helps me approach my subjects with that mindset of 1.4. Like I really start to walk into my photo shoots knowing what capabilities I have with my lenses, and that can help me really like achieve a better photo for my clients 10 times that, you know, because I know what I'm capable of, and I know what my equipment is capable of because I've done these tests, and I know that when I have that beautiful sharp plane of focus, I'm able to really get eyes in focus or whatever detail I'm trying to get in focus, whether they're holding something. And I actually have one more example of that actually too in this next slide. Oh, okay. Actually, we'll talk about this one first. Almost forgot about this. So here's some examples where a super wide aperture is going to really benefit your photography and your approach with portraits. The first one and the most obvious being creating like an eye-catching eye detail. Really isolating expressive eyes and drawing in your viewer and creating that intimacy with razor sharp focus is one of the most like amazing and beautiful reasons why I would use 1.4 on my aperture and do use 1.4 as my aperture for most all of my portraits, because I'm always trying to get this beautiful artistic quality in my portraits, but still retain the information in the photograph that is necessary. And with a portrait, it's generally the eyes. The eyes are like the window to your soul, they say. And that's one of the features that I always generally try to put my focus marker on and make sure that that is what is indeed in focus with my work. And so this is obviously an example where shooting at 1.4 is just going to create absolutely beautiful work for you. Another example of why you would want to shoot at 1.4 is kind of giving a focus on a specific detail in your photo. So for this photo, highlighting this like delicate detail of the film camera that I'm shooting with. And even though there are all these flowers around, none of them are kind of in focus. The entire background is out of focus. If I actually like take the time to like go through and clean up the background, you would really be able to just focus on that camera. But I love the ability of shooting a 1.4 to be able to say, this is what I want to focus on right here. Like this is the important part of my photo that I really want my viewer to zone in on. Same like if you were doing jewelry. So if you're photographing like a bride and her ring, or maybe you're doing makeup photography, beauty photography, and you really just want the focus to be on like the swatch of moisturizer or like the curl of the eyelash or something like this. Like shooting at this setting will really help you focus your viewer's attention onto what you're trying to say of what's important in your photo. And another example that I kind of already showed is obviously this beautiful way of capturing light in a background. You'll notice a lot of holiday photos, you'll have these beautiful orbs of light in the background that kind of go into circles. This is called bokeh or bokeh, whatever you want to call it. I call it bokeh. I don't know why I said bokeh first, but you create this beautiful, beautiful pattern of light in the background when you're shooting at this aperture, and you have those lights in the background too. And I just think that it's so beautiful. It helps you really play with that focus. It also helps you isolate and highlight the specific areas and parts of your image that you want to highlight. And again, it's simply like the creative tool that you need in your toolkit to be able to master and understand so that you can approach any photo shoot, but especially your portraits with this kind of creative artistic eye. So I was talking with my representative, Blaine, the other day, actually just yesterday in preparation for this talk, and he had a really fun metaphor that I wanted to share with you guys that I thought was kind of like a beautiful way to think about this aperture of 1.4. He said, essentially think about like this as the aperture being bolding a single word in a sentence. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is so beautiful. I really like that. It's so true that like when you're shooting at this and you're thinking of like the entire, like this webcam, like everything is here in focus. But if we were shooting at 1.4 and we focused on just the eyes, everything else would be out of focus. And thinking of that as like the bolded word in a sentence, I really thought that was beautiful. And I think that could connect to any of my writer friends out there. It's just so elegant and it's so true. So bokeh also can be considered like more lingo. I understand that us photographers use a lot of lingo, so I'm really trying to watch myself because I want to make sure you guys are really understanding this. But one thing that a lot of photographers will say is that bokeh is crushing the background. It kind of makes it so everything, and I think this, I have another example that does, oh, not here, we're not here yet. Here we go. When we crush the background, we make it so like nothing is kind of visible. We're just kind of really isolating our subject and making it so all we want to do is focus on just that subject. And it kind of creates that creamy canvas. And essentially it makes it so your background can be absolutely anything. Like it can literally be a dumpster or anything out there in the world that you wouldn't necessarily think of as a beautiful background. But if it has beautiful colors, then you can just use that aperture to make it so you can't recognize anything but these beautiful, colorful blobs. And so as you are, if you do get the chance to rent or purchase one of these lenses and shoot at this aperture, go on a photo walk. Actually, I would love to ask again, another question for you in the comments. Does anybody here go on regular photo walks? And if not, a fun idea for you and maybe some homework, just your creative homework for today from me to you, is to rent one of these or borrow one of these or get your hands on at least some sort of larger aperture lens, and go on a photo walk and just start capturing the mundane things around you. And you'll be shocked, I promise you, at how simple this setting can create this like beautiful, beautiful moment. Just really making mundane things into absolutely extraordinary things. So a little bit of homework. Oh, we have some people in the comments. Every Sunday morning, you go on a photo walk. I love that. Almost every day. Guys, my photo professors would be so proud of you. I should practice what I preach. I don't go on a lot of photo walks, but I do have a lot of experimentation within my studio. But I'm inspired by you guys, and I will absolutely be doing this now. I need to practice what I preach here. So go on a photo walk, use this aperture, and just literally like capture insects, capture a flower that you see, and you will notice like it's absolutely beautiful when you start to like look around your surroundings and see it through this like new set of eyes that you're training yourself on how to photograph at this like beautiful, unique aperture. So, okay, next topic. I'd love to take you guys back to my college days. Okay, so I want you guys in your imaginations here and imagine that you're in a small classroom where the entire class critiques your work and your professors are laying out for you like rules, right? Like here are all the rules to a good photo. All right, so here are some of the rules that they say. Every photo must follow the rule of thirds. Every photo must fill the frame. Every photo must not have the subject perfectly in the center. Every photo can't have the horizon line in the middle. Do not, under any circumstances, cut off a limb of a portrait. And ensure elements are circling the viewer's eye within your photo. And then last but certainly not least, the most annoying is that every detail has to be in tack sharp focus. Okay. So all of these rules now kind of make me cringe. And what first seemed as like innocent advice, I realized only later in life just created so much unnecessary blocks to my creative potential, especially when these beautiful images that we take just get discarded because everything is not tack sharp focus. Like this is where I raised my eyebrow. It took me so long to break away from this mindset from school that like a good photo must follow these rules. But after I challenged this idea and taking some of these images that weren't perfectly in focus and these portraits where I simply had to cut off a body part to focus on the face, I found that these rules were definitely not always supposed to be followed. So I think we should call them something else, maybe guidelines, maybe not even guidelines. But anyways, fast forward to today where I regularly sell clients, happy clients, photos that are slightly soft or photos that have body parts cropped out. I've even had commercial clients who had the choice between an image that was tack sharp and technically sound, but they opted to go for the more creative approach that was maybe slightly soft or something that was just a little bit different and out of the box. So I only bring this up because there are no rules that should keep you in a box with your photography. And this is really one of the points that I would love to just draw home. There's something about studying and adhering to these rules that we get and that we hear, and even something about studying creativity in general that I would love to just highlight for you as a lesson for today. Like if you can take one lesson, maybe take this one. So the overall lesson being that the more that you study and subscribe to these rules, the further you actually get from creativity. So a funny kind of story with you guys. I have this amazing roommate, photographer, best friend, Emily Teague, who is not here right now. But I came out here one day and I was so motivated. I'm like, I'm going to read every single book there is on creativity. I was just like motivated. And she was like, wow, well, that's a lot of books. And I was like, yep, and I'm going to start today. And so I went to like my audio book app called Libby. It's free audiobooks, by the way. And I see that there's thousands of books on creativity. So I just go for the first one that's like 1 hour. I'm like, done. I'm gonna accomplish this, like no problem. So I'm reading this audiobook. It's called Creativity by John Cleese. If any of you are taking notes and interested, highly recommend. But what was fascinating was literally towards the end of the book, it was like, okay, dear reader, if you're listening to this, you're clearly interested in learning about creativity. But what I advise you is that you stop learning about creativity, because the more that you learn and research and study, the further away that you actually get from being creative. Because you start to create this checklist in your head of what the greats are doing and what you're supposed to be doing and like what the rules are and like what makes a good photo. And instead of going the approach of what do I want to be shooting? What do I think is creative? How do I want to express myself creatively? So there's something really in here that I just want to drive home, that just because there are so many books on creativity, just because there's so many opinions on creativity and what makes a good photo, all of these rules with photography, you do not need to read the books. You do not need to follow the rules. I encourage you to follow and find your own path. This is what I have done and what has made my work really become my own work and not Lara Jade's work or Emily Teague's work or Bella Kotak's work. You know, we all have our, Annie Leibovitz work, Tim Walker's work. We all have our own unique styles. And the more that we really start to focus on what we're interested in and experiment with the tools that we have and continue to practice every single day on our photo walks or our studio experimentations, then the closer we're getting to creativity. All right. So again, I just wanted to drive that home because there's something within this industry about following the rules and putting ourselves into the boxes. And I just want to reassure you that there's certainly beautiful and captivating work that doesn't follow these rules. And there's a big chance that our work could be more creative if we allowed ourselves that space to experiment and be open-minded there. So embrace the happy accidents and those unexpected outcomes, because the lesson learned is that it's not a big deal to slightly misfocus sometimes. I mean, that can be a thing when you're shooting at 1.4 as well. And that's just the honest truth, is that it takes some experimentation and some practice to really nail the focus and understand your camera and your tools enough that you are experimenting. And if you're out there experimenting, then that's a win. So if you're still taking photos and they're not all sharp, don't get discouraged. That's yourself practicing and getting better. And any day you can get out there with a camera in your hands and experiment, even without a subject, even if you're just on a photo walk, that is a win. And I guarantee that you're going to be shocked by how the ordinary can become the extraordinary when you're shooting at an aperture like this. So all this to recap, challenge that perfectionism trap in portraiture and embrace that beauty of imperfection. Let go of the rules and ideals and embrace your happy accidents, and just be unafraid to share your experience with those unsharp moments, because usually they're artistic treasures. If I threw out every and any photo that was slightly sharp, I wouldn't have a lot of work to share, honestly, because I end up loving that kind of soft focus that this particular aperture brings, but also the sharpness of what you're focusing on as well, and that contrast. I love it. So there was also some beautiful parallels between the film world that I wanted to share with you guys today. So I'd love to ask you guys in the comments as well, do we have anybody interested in video or making films or anything along those lines? And I'll give you some time to answer that as I go back into my slides to this one. Okay, so I'm not seeing any comments yet, but I'm just going to assume that we have some people here interested in films. If you're interested in photography, you might be interested in filmmaking. I'm just throwing it out there, just as a food for thought. So in my research for today's presentation, I found this beautiful parallel between the film world and photography. And that is that in the film world, especially with classic films like Casablanca here on the right and Star Trek here on the left, they would use soft focus intentionally to help highlight the femininity of a subject. That to me, when I learned this, was just like an aha moment. It was like the light bulbs went off in my head as somebody that I think femininity is one of my main inspirations. I'm always bringing feminine objects into my frame, even if I'm photographing men, just because I think that there is something so whimsical and beautiful about that quality. And the idea that you would intentionally shoot like a movie scene or sequence with a soft focus really just like unlocked something in my head. And I wanted to bring this up especially because I want you guys to starting to think about aperture and the quality of your photo in terms of like sharpness and softness as a tool in your toolbox. Okay, so you can start thinking outside of the box instead of like everything has to be sharp and in focus, and instead think of what sorts of situations would lend themselves to a soft focus situation. So think fantasy, think dreams, think altered states of consciousness, think that moment when you are first waking up and everything's a little bit blurry, or you know, get punched in the face and you're getting back up. I wouldn't know how that feels, but something like this. These are like the scenarios when you would think to kind of like enhance and do something a little bit creatively with your aperture or with your frame, with your photos. And so also just like as a side note, I've always loved this kind of quality. And once I learned about like pro mist filters, I immediately got one for my Sony camera, which is the camera that I use for all of my self-portraits, because I have always been searching for this quality and how to get this into my work. So shooting at 1.4 also only became possible as soon as I swapped to Sony with the Sigma lenses, because beforehand I was shooting with a Nikon camera and I was having to focus on something, hit the manual focus, run into the frame, sit there, take a couple photos, squint on my TV, on my computer screen to see if I'm in focus, and then go back and do this back and forth. And I learned a lot, but there's something really magical now about having no fear about taking self-portraits like I've shown in like these, for example, are all shot at 1.4 and they're self-portraits. And it's because I had that eye autofocus on my camera and that capability with my Sigma lens as well. And so I bring this up because obviously you can start to think about how you can use this creatively, whether it is in photos or whether it is in video as well. So I really, really encourage you to start thinking about this technique and how you can use it creatively and testing it with the things that you're already shooting right now. And also really quickly, I'd love to mention some other features on this lens besides the obvious amazing ability to shoot at 1.4, which I've just gone on and on and on about because I can talk about this all day. So one cool feature, okay, so obviously it has the autofocus and the manual focus lock. So as I was talking about before, if you have a camera that doesn't have eye autofocus, but you are interested in taking self-portraits, this is crucial. And how I have gone years and years of practicing my own self-portrait work is I would move it to manual focus. Well, okay, actually, I would start with automatic focus. I would focus on something within the frame about where I would be standing in or moving into the frame. Once it was focused, I swapped it to manual focus, and this locked my focus in, so I didn't have to necessarily worry about any of my photos not being in focus, but it did mean that I had to stay perfectly still on that focus plane, because as you are locking focus here, if you suddenly like move, lean backwards, then you're going to get out of focus images. But if you know in advance, then you're not going to waste any time because you know exactly where your focus is going to be, and you'll learn a lot by doing this. So wanted to highlight that feature because if any of you are still experimenting with self-portraits, that is truly like how I learned how to do it. Before I got this fancy new camera that just automatically focuses on eyes, it's cheating. Anyway, so there's also an autofocus lock button, and I know that other cameras, you have the ability to like essentially customize this to do whatever you want, and I haven't used it quite yet, but we have wonderful Sigma people here that I'm sure would give you some ideas if any of you are interested. But the standout favorite feature of this lens is the aperture ring, and they call it an iris ring, which I love because again, we're bringing these parallels to our eyes and a lens, which are essentially similar in how they function. But what I love is that this brings me back to like my film day. I'm trying to give you a good view of this. This brings me back to film days, right? When you have your control over your aperture on the lens. And so as I'm shooting, I just want you to like imagine if you're shooting a client, if you're my client and I'm about to shoot you and I am taking your photo and I'm realizing as I'm taking the photos that they're a little bit dark on the screen because the images will pop up on my mirrorless camera like as soon as you take them. If you're noticing they're a little bit dark, with any other camera, I would have to be like, oh crap, okay, wait 1 second, I have to change my settings and and then like come back to the moment. With the aperture ring, as soon as you're comfortable and confident with using it, you're able to just make that adjustment right here and not miss that moment and not like lose that connection with your client. And that for me is so, so big. It's also amazing to just be able to like change your shot. So say I'm shooting a couple at like f2.8 or something like this to try to get both of them in focus, but I want to try something creative. And I actually have a slide. I keep forgetting that I have visuals. I'm just excited to chat with you guys today. So here are some things I'm definitely going to go back and chat with you about. Okay, so here's a recent client shoot I did, both shot at 1.4. And the photo on the right, I had no worries about shooting at 1.4, even though it was two people, because one, I knew that when they're facing each other, they're going to be on that same plane. As long as one person wasn't super close and one person wasn't super far away from me, I knew that I was going to have a beautiful image. And I wanted to shoot at 1.4 because I wanted that disco ball to just kind of fade and the details of their other sides of their bodies to kind of fade into the background as well. And I mean, when they saw this, they gasped, they loved it, they bought it. It was like extra to their shoot, but it was just another example where I had the ability to change my settings within my camera without kind of like breaking that connection with my client. And that's priceless. That is absolutely priceless. So I really wanted to mention this as one of my favorite features. And also, especially since we've been talking about film, it has the ability to turn on and off a click. It's not really a sound. It's like a feeling. I mean, I guess there's a little bit of a sound when you use it. If you are taking portraits, I highly suggest to leave the click on. One, because it feels really nice and you know, because you can feel it when you're changing your aperture. And two, because I did test some portraits with the click off and I found that when I'm shooting, it's the wild, wild west. I'll be like moving my camera like this and accidentally changing my aperture without noticing. So you want to have that click on because it really helps you like know with confidence what you're shooting at. However, if you're shooting video or if you're interested in shooting video, having that click off and being able to record whatever you're shooting and move that focus ring so that you can have everything in focus and then just zoom in on just the eyes. You're able to do that with this lens in a really, really beautiful way. But I would just recommend that you turn that click off. But I think that is such a clever and beautiful feature of this lens that I just love and I really wanted to highlight here today. And I had something else to say about it. Yeah, maybe not. Yeah, it just reminds me of shooting on film. And I started photography, my whole journey shooting on film in high school. And I think that there's something really beautiful and nostalgic about having that aperture ring and being able to like fine tune your vision instantly on your camera screen instead of pulling it away and losing that connection and just like messing with your camera. There's nothing more vulnerable than a subject being in front of your camera. So if you are shooting portraits and you are flustered with your gear and you're just like trying to figure it out, like your subjects can pick up on that also. So I'm telling you, the more that you experiment and play and understand your tools, the better you're going to be at capturing those creative portraits and shooting at a 1.4 aperture with confidence. So this lens overall, it helps me slow down, savor that process, and be deliberate about my compositions. And that's really kind of my highlights for today. I have a couple slides here that I flew through that I can go over, and I also have some key takeaways and some advice for you at the end. But now would be a great time if you have any questions to throw them in the chat, because we're nearing the end and I would love to make sure I get time to address any questions that you guys might have. So yeah, so while you're doing that, I guess I'll go back here and kind of talk through what you're seeing. So this particular shoot, I really wanted to get, I think for photographers, it's always good to have photos of you shooting with a camera. And I've been really trying to shoot more with film. So that's what that was. I love this ability of shooting at 1.4 and being able to get certain details in focus. So this photo on the left, you'll see like the focus is the flowers. And this is because I'm trying to make myself a little bit more anonymous. I'm trying to have the focus more so be on the flowers and the feeling, more like a fragrance ad than like a portrait. And I love that. The photo on the right is actually taken behind a sheet of frosted plexiglass. And you can see that frosted plexiglass. This is why I brought up this image as well. And also the next photo kind of illustrates how I would take a self-portrait with that autofocus and that manual focus lock. So the photo before, I would be focusing on those sprigs of leaves coming up. And then I know with confidence, as soon as I switch to manual focus and move it in frame, if my face is on that same plane of the leaf, then I know that my face is going to be in focus for that photo. And so I thought I would illustrate this a little bit. And here are some more images from that same set. Again, shooting at 1.4, you would think like just one thing's in focus, but still it manages to get the entire flower hydrangea, my hair and the wig all in focus in, I think, a beautiful way. I also loved this idea of shooting with plexi behind me to give that unique kind of separation between myself and the background. There's a window light coming through the background that I really wanted to kind of do something creative with instead of just like a plain white backdrop. This is me being a little mad scientist. Like I was saying earlier, I think it's so good to just try things, even if you don't like it. I've never even shared these photos. In the end of the day, I was like, I don't know if I like love them. Like I'm proud of myself for experimenting and doing this, but I don't know, maybe I should actually share them. But I just wanted to give you that example of how and why it's good to just continue to experiment with your settings. Here's that beautiful example of my client shoot. Here, just me unboxing my Sigma lenses, so happy as a clam. And yeah, okay, so here are some takeaways. So the Sigma Art lenses are obviously a very versatile tool. They don't only just shoot at 1.4, they go all the way up to f16. So if you are shooting landscapes, this is going to be beautiful for you as well. If you're shooting anything, this is going to be beautiful for you. Like this will not leave my camera now. Like between the 35, the 50, and the 85, I feel absolutely set as a photographer to be able to capture anything that I need. I think it's a must-have in my toolkit to be able to shoot at that aperture at any millimeter, whether it is a up-close portrait or something a little further out, like a 35. In fact, my second lens I ever got was the Sigma 35 1.4, and that was such a treat to be able to go around and do a lot of street style client portraits out in New York City. That's an incredible lens. If you are taking anything out and about, highly recommend that 35. So yeah, other key takeaways, let go of the rules. I really hope that that is like one of the things you can like write down in your journal as a note, as a lesson to move forward throughout life. Embrace those imperfections and the beauty that you can get from those imperfections and those things that you didn't necessarily like see coming, or the beautiful imperfections essentially that you can get from shooting at that wide aperture. And embrace play and experimentation, explore your world and get out there with your photo walks and bring people into your home, into your studio, photograph people in their home, photograph people when they're coming into town, and photograph your family. I think this is a big one for me that I'm learning this year. We have to capture the people that we love and those moments that are so precious to us. And I think that these lenses are a beautiful way to do just that. So get out there, shoot every single day. You know, they say you need 10,000 hours in order to be a professional at anything. And I fully believe that. After 17 years now of having a camera in my hands, I think I'm pretty close to that. And you can hopefully tell with my work, and the quality has just been going up and up and up since I've been a photographer with that experimentation. So experiment, experiment, experiment. Forget all of the haters, forget, the idea of failure. These things, they're only holding you back. Just be okay with failure, be okay with experimenting and things not being perfect, and be okay with no one supporting you at first. If that's where you're at, continue on your path, be bold, share your work, and I guarantee you, you're going to start finding your people. And, if you're connecting with anything I'm saying here in the chat, or here I'm saying today, people here in the chat are wonderful humans. Like, I know for a fact, Andy, Heather, Danielle, we got John, we got so many people that are in my community that I look to for support, and they're just wonderful humans. And as soon as you start to share your work, you're going to find these people. Like, they somehow found me, and I feel so, so grateful for that. And I really hope that you can take that as a lesson too. And I know it's easier said than done, but believe me, when you share your work, even if you're not getting a lot of response at first, it's going to be the snowball effect, and you're going to get some good responses. You're going to get bad responses, but more than anything, you're going to get that knowledge, that experience, those photos in your portfolio, and you're going to be able to look back at your progress and be like, wow, I learned a lot. So, okay. Thank you all for being here so much. I'd love to answer any of the questions you have with the time I have left. Also, just for further learning from myself, I do have a YouTube channel, just like shameless plug, gonna throw it out there. So if you're interested in any of the other parts of photography, whether it be editing, how I set up my portraits, things like that, I have a couple videos out there on that. I'm most active on Instagram. I've already mentioned, I've been sharing my work, my portfolio of images essentially since the dawn of time on there. Also on stories, I'm always sharing little bits of real life on there as well. And also just wanted to quickly shout out my Facebook group, which is a community of wonderful creatives of all kinds. There's not just photographers in there, but there are photographers of every level. And I'm always seeing people share their work there. It makes me so happy. So we have lovely critiques in there. There's no bad vibes allowed. We're really strict about kicking out anybody that doesn't, that isn't being helpful and kind. I think that is something that I really, really tried to uphold in that group. And so I would love for you to join that if that's something you're interested in. And maybe I'll put a link here in the comments as well to that, so that if you're interested, you can come join. So I hope we can connect on any of those channels. And yes, okay, I'm finally opening the floor to questions. Okay, let me see. You guys are so kind here in the comments. Thank you so, so much for being here. I love seeing this. I love reading this. Okay. Going all the way to the top. Always impressed with people who do awesome self-portraiture. I think I'd have so much trouble switching between subject and photographer. You know how you get better at this is by doing the thing. Sir Kevin, I think you'll find yourself pleasantly surprised at how much it starts to make sense. Honestly, I think I understood photography in general so much better once I started to be the subject and the photographer, running back and forth from like here to there. Also, I was able to start like posing my models so much better and like directing people so much better. I can't suggest it enough. Honestly, even if like flowery, feminine things aren't your vibe, like try a self-portrait that is like mostly shadows and you're like hiding your face, or like you're holding a coffee cup in front of your face or something like this. Like think creatively on how you can still take a self-portrait because you are available as a model. And I guarantee you, you're gonna start getting creative there. And Brandi is a ray of sunshine on my Instagram feed. I love it. I love to hear this. Wow. Okay. We've got some New Jersey, Texas. Okay. I'm not seeing many questions, but I know that we had some also before our webinar. We had collected some questions. So I think I might start there first and let you guys and let you guys ask some more questions here in the chat. Oh, hey, thanks. Thanks for the reminder. Okay, stop share. Here we go. Thank you for that reminder. Okay, yes, actually, and now I can see the questions because I'm not scared. Okay, so we collected some questions at the very beginning of all of this. And so I'm just going to run through some of these. And again, please put any in the chat if you're still here and you're curious about anything. So a question from Michael. Do you have any tips for black and white? Wow, this is something that I definitely didn't talk about at all today. Something I also stopped doing a lot in my work is shooting black and white, mostly because there was this like saying out there that like, you know, black and white is just like throwing filter on it. And I've been really trying to undo a lot of these like mindsets and rules around photography, especially around black and white. So my tips essentially would be to be fearless and let go of all of those things I just said. But number two, to just think about it in terms of contrast, right? So if we're thinking about the elements and the principles of design in general that relate to photography, with black and white, without color, you only have tonal range to get your message across and get your image to be impactful. So my tips with black and white would be to think about the most amount of contrast that you can create in the most impactful areas. So if I was to be taking a black and white image, I might consider like if I was wearing this black turtleneck, I might consider a striking white backdrop, and that's going to give me that contrast. Or if I really wanted to put the focus on facial features, I would do a darker backdrop. And so therefore the lightest and brightest parts of the image would be on my face. And again, if you're photographing anything like a lipstick thing, just think about how you can create contrast within your image, and your black and white images, I think, will be really, really striking. I think when you just plop a black and white filter on any old photo without considering how contrast and tonal range is going to be in play, that's where I start to just not love black and white. So those are my thoughts. Rules are meant to be broken. Prove me wrong, please. So, okay, next question. We have a question from Carmen. What are some of the techniques that you use to get your models to feel comfortable and confident? Where do you get most of your inspiration from? How do you psych yourself out? Okay, there's a lot of questions within this one question. I'm going to start with the first one. Some techniques that I use to get my models comfortable and confident. Like I said, when I'm shooting self-portraits, one, I'm able to know like how I want them to be posing and standing. So I like to I'll just like kind of stand up and give, I like to give them like, okay, mirror me, okay? And I'll do like something fun like this, and then they'll do this and we'll have a little laugh and they'll be like, okay, perfect. So now we're gonna move your feet and your hips and everything this way, okay? And then they'll look at me and I'll be like, I mean your nose too, you know? And just like make these jokes, make it kind of fun and playful to be in front of your camera. And that's how you can make them comfortable and feeling confident. Is like when you start to express to them like, you look so beautiful when you know you're looking towards the light. So let's keep your nose and your face like always kind of like lifted towards the light, because that's the beautiful quality of light that we want to capture on your face, and things like this. So I'm always giving my models feedback. I'm always saying things like, that was so beautiful, this looks so gorgeous, or literally giving them specific movements. I'll be like, this is your nose, move your nose a little bit this way or a little bit this way, or the tilt of your head. I do this a lot. Sometimes I just like put up my hand and do this and people already know what I'm talking about. Like, wow, this is great. So those are my tips. You're going to get more confident posing people and making your subjects feel more comfortable the more that you do it. So again, the whole 10,000 hours thing, just get your practice in and get your test shoots, and you're going to find yourself, or photograph yourself. Like I said, if you're too shy to work with other people, like just get in front of the camera yourself and find that self-portrait like flow, and find your like creativity there, because I really think that that's something that really, really, really helped me get my subjects comfortable. Where do I get my inspiration from? everywhere. I get inspired by like objects. Like I got a teacup and I was like, this is going to be my prop for my next shoot. Like I'm so excited, it's so cute. Or I'll get like a wig and I'll be like, wow, this is a whole new character. Like where is this going? Or my favorite, I'll go to an event and they're going to throw away the flowers at the event because it's over. And I'm like, no, wait, like let me take them home. And then I'll like create, I don't even know, like a whole new thing. So as you can see, I get a lot of inspiration like on a whim. I'm really always trying to keep my brain open to how can I use this creatively in a photo shoot? So even with my film camera, I do a lot of I use this a lot as a prop, less so as an actual functioning film camera because I have another one that I prefer. But I've always like loved my little look of my original OG first film camera. And so I'm always thinking like, how can I use these things creatively in a photo shoot? And that's where I get a lot of my inspiration from, my actual surroundings. I also get inspiration from Pinterest. I think that it's wonderful to look to other people's work and get inspired that way. But I always want to say that with a caution of we don't want to completely copy what we're seeing that we like from other people. We want to learn how they did it and maybe find our own way to do that particular thing. Or you can, you know, and I've done this too in the past, and I think it's totally okay if you're so inspired by a particular image to try to recreate it, but always giving that credit to the artist and being like, man, I love this image so much. It really inspired me to start to learn about photography more. I've certainly done that, and it's okay if any of you watching that are inspired by my work to do that as well. But let's just uphold each other's like integrity with our work and always make sure that we're giving credit where credit is due. So inspiration is always one of those things that I love to talk about. I could talk another whole hour about inspiration, but I'll let that one go now. And let's see. What is my go-to lens for headshots? Okay, that's a great question and pretty on par for today's topic. So for headshots, I'm always going for something a little bit closer, unless it's an environmental headshot, and that meaning a CEO at their desk, you know, like this, and like you want the vibes of the studio around you. If that's the case, I would go for something like a 35, but 9 times out of 10, I'm doing a headshot. It is going to be with a 50mm or an 85mm. The 85mm is, in my opinion, like the best portrait lens that you can get. I think it minimizes a lot of distortion with shooting the headshot shooting people. You can tell when you're shooting with a 35 really close to a subject that you start to kind of widen them out a little bit. And with the 85, because it's a little bit more zoomed in, you have to take a couple steps back, but it makes it so you're going to get a crisp image. But I really do also love 50 because it's kind of somewhere in between and you can stand a little bit closer to your subject. And I think that that's really nice as well. Sometimes when you're shooting with an 85 or God forbid, 70-200 or something that makes you have to shoot really, really far away, it's suddenly not wonderful to connect with your subject because you're standing across the room saying like, this looks great, you know? So I really like to always shoot at something like 50mm or 85mm for a headshot. So that is that. A couple more questions here. I have a question from Autumn. I don't have any lighting equipment. Do you give natural light ideas? Ooh, okay to not have lighting equipment. We have the best lighting equipment possible for free, the sun, and honestly, windows are one of the best lighting modifiers that you can ever ask for, especially for portraits. So a lot of my early work in portraits were taken right up next to a window. I mean, when you are near a north window, a window that's facing north, and you're in the northern hemisphere, you're going to get always a really beautiful soft quality of light for natural light portraits, as opposed to if it was like east or west, you're going to have some direct sunlight, which can create a lot of really fun effects for you to shoot with as well. But I think if you're just starting out, you don't have lighting equipment, you want some natural light ideas, start with that really soft quality of north window light. And I think you'll have a lot of fun with that. It's always really, really beautiful and flattering, no matter age, skin tone, anything like that. So that would be my biggest suggestion there. And so yeah, okay, next question from Maxine. Are there any more affordable Sigma lenses that you suggest for someone working on a budget? Love this question. I think that the biggest suggestion that I would have, and I would love to maybe bring Erin in on this question as well, from Sigma, but the lenses themselves are already fairly cheap compared to other brands that I will not mention. The 50 and 85 and 35 all kind of range around the $800 mark, but you can absolutely find them used for slightly less. Or rent them when you need them. I know Adorama both has a used department and a rental department, so they could absolutely hook you up with that. But Erin, did you have any other things to kind of add in on
Sure. Yeah. So the
budgeting
art
for?
series primes that we're kind of focusing on right now, they're going to range anywhere between $800 and $1,200 new. We do run instant savings from time to time. Like right now, we have kind of our big holiday sale going on, so there are discounts on those lenses available now. We also make another family of lenses, the contemporary series of lenses, and they are just as sharp as the art series lenses, but they tend to be a little bit slower aperture, so we can make them smaller and lighter weight, and being a little bit easier to produce. Those are a little bit lower cost as well. Those are generally going to be like the I series for full frame mirrorless would be anywhere between 550 and 700 new. And then if you're shooting on a smaller format like the APS-C mirrorless cameras, we have fast aperture contemporary primes that are still 1.4 like the art series. But because they're designed for smaller formats, those lenses are anywhere from 340 to 480. And then if those are still kind of outside of your range, renting is always a great way, especially if you're not sure what lens is going to be the best fit for your type of photography. If you have access to a rental department, that's a really great way to try something out without having to commit to it and find out if it does or doesn't work once you own it. And then used is also for lenses, usually a pretty safe bet. You can tell pretty quickly what kind of life it's had before it got to you, and that's another great way to get really high quality equipment a little bit more easily.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and no shame in borrowing a friend's also, especially if this is a brand new lens. I've done that before for sure. I also had the privilege of going to photography school where we could rent equipment. So I highly suggest trying it out also before you buy it too, to just make sure that you feel confident in that you're going to be using it, because I mean, it is an investment, but it's one of those investments that once you have it, it's like in your toolkit forever. I mean, these things are tanks, right? Like I'll have these lenses forever, I'm sure. So, yeah, those would be my suggestions there. And thank you, Erin, for chiming in there. Okay, so a couple more questions we have. One from Ariana. How do you never run out of photo concepts? No, I should have read that one. It just find your inspiration from around you. Like I said, I think for me, it's always just keeping my eyes open and my brain open for what is my next photo shoot going to be. Like that's a question I'm genuinely always asking myself, and so that's kind of how you never run out of photo concepts, is that you kind of have to start getting really playful at one point, like I think at one point during the pandemic I had to cut my own bangs, and again another whole photo shoot that I've never even shared, but like that was the photo, right? Like I'm just like this, and it's just like this weird action, but it's also just like like I never would have thought to like photograph that, but it is but it has like this kind of story around it too. And again, now that I'm saying this, like, why am I not sharing this? I need to share that. And that's how you never run out of concepts. It's just always kind of looking at life and the people around you, the objects around you, and thinking, how can I creatively like turn this into a concept or bring this into an idea that I already have? Okay, awesome. And then, can you create great photos without the Sigma Art lens? If you can't afford that as yet, what is the next best thing? Okay, like the whole section in my presentation, there are no rules to creating great work. You can create fabulous work with a kit lens, okay? And a kit lens meaning like something that only stops down to like f4. But like as I was showing in that presentation, you're not going to be able to get that like range of imagery, that range of depth of field, that range of having that creaminess bokeh in the background without an art lens or without a lens that's able to go to that 1.4. So of course you can create great work, but you're just not going to have that versatility of aperture without those. So if you can't afford that, what's the next best thing? I think if you can't afford it and you only have a kit lens, the next best thing, I would just start getting creative with like what you can maybe do on top of your lens. So for example, in film, to get that soft focus, they would put like silk over the lens and shoot through silk. So it like kind of gives that quality. There's also filters, like I mentioned, the Pro Mist filter is what I went out and purchased to put on my kit lens for my Sony when I first got it, because I really wanted all of my work to have that like beautiful soft quality. In that, it's like a quick, cheap fix. Obviously, a piece of tulle, a piece of fabric is going to be a lot cheaper than a lens filter or going out and buying a new lens. But it will not replace the ability to shoot at f1.4 without having any sort of like, you get also some artifacts and like, it's just, you never really know what you're going to get when you're putting something over your lens. So I will just say that it's always going to be like a creative artistic approach when you are adjusting the softness of your imagery with something that you put over your lens, as opposed to just shooting at an aperture like 1.4, if that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so going to our comments now. Let's see, I saw one question in here. What type, oh wait, right here. One from Garth. How long does it take from concept to shooting usually? Ooh, great question. Sometimes like hours. Like I will get like motivation. I'll just be doing my hair and like, I think I want to shoot today, and then I'll just like go in here and I'll set up a time lapse. That's a tip actually I have for you guys. If you have trouble like getting into high gear, put the camera on a time lapse on you, and I guarantee you will not stop moving, because as soon as you sit down, you'll be like, man, I'm just wasting footage, and like, it's just not going to be a good clip. If you start doing time lapse of when you're setting yourself up, you are going to be really quick about it. And it's just the faster that I can get from concept to shooting also, the better, because usually more often than not, I'll have all of these ideas. I've had hundreds, thousands maybe of ideas of photos. But because I didn't get into high gear and start putting things and like getting into the motions of actually shooting it, they're just ideas in a notebook right now that one day will be photographed. But so sometimes it can be really, really quick. Other times I'll actually get a model and a team together. And so I'll be like, okay, when is everybody available? Next Friday. Okay, next Friday, I know I'm going to have at least these people available. I know I want to shoot this concept, and then I can really start thinking about it and taking my time to really perfect what I'm going to be shooting with other people. And that's kind of another thing. When you're shooting by yourself and you're just exploring and being creative, there's no pressure. It's wonderful. You're just, I can shoot right now if I want, or like up until midnight if I wanted. But when you're suddenly working with other people, models, makeup artists, stylists, things like this, it does apply a certain amount of pressure to make sure that you are thoughtful about all of the concept pieces. So I will also say that and encourage more self-portraits here, because that is something that I've just found to be so helpful to help me go from concept to shooting immediately. Or using somebody around you, right? Like a family member or a sibling or a friend. I would do that. Next question from Lloyd. What type of lighting do you recommend for soft focus? For example, if you diffuse the light too. Okay, I might have just answered this, but so the soft focus, especially with film photography or those like old classic films, they are I'm not actually sure how they're lighting it. I think it's a relatively dim light, but honestly, I don't think that it's the type of lighting that's really making as much of a difference as it is the lens and the modifier that's being put on a lens. So for example, the photo that I shared of like the Casablanca actress and the Star Trek actress, I believe that they had a lens that one shot wide open, and two, that they put some sort of material like silk, like Vaseline, on a filter over their lens. And that is what's causing that kind of like beautiful soft focus. So you can diffuse the light. Obviously, the more that you diffuse your light, the softer your shadows are going to be overall. But in those examples, I don't necessarily think that it's this soft quality of light as it is more of a soft focus, right? So there's a difference between the two a little bit. And I hope I explained that well. And if you have any more questions about that or specifics, I'm happy to talk more on that. But that's a great question. Okay, so we might be nearing the end here. Let me just look. I've got good tips. Thank you so much. Creative January, a great time to break out the inspirations. Okay, so if you don't already know, a lot of people in here are already in my group and I love this, but Creative January is a creative challenge that I'm also hosting next month, where you do something creative every single day and you share about it. And so I will absolutely be breaking out my inspiration notebooks and like pulling out all stops to be able to do something creative every single day. So if you're interested in a creative challenge, anyone, follow me on Instagram or in that Facebook group, and I'll get you all of the information you need for that. But it is so much fun. And thank you, Heather, for bringing that up, because I don't know how I forgot that. So yeah, okay. So those are all the questions I think that we have. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate you all being here. This has been so much fun. Like I said, I'm available on Instagram, mostly primarily. I'm also available on my Facebook group. Got a lot of materials on YouTube and things like this. I'm always loving hearing feedback on if anything that I'm saying is really connecting with you, or you're able to take any of these lessons into the real world. If you shoot anything that's been inspired from today, send it to me. I would love to see it. I love encouraging you guys and hearing from you guys on what you're doing and how we can kind of encourage each other to grow and share more too. So thank you guys for being here, and I hope this was inspirational, insightful. And well, Aaron, do you have anything else you'd like to say before we sign off here?
Well, obviously, a big thank you to you for sharing all of that insight and kind of a look into your journey of how you've gotten here. Thank you, of course, to Adorama for hosting us today, and thank you to everyone who joined us and is watching the recording after the fact.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Adorama. Thank you, Sigma. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and asking these wonderful questions. It's been an honor, and I hope to connect with you guys soon.